Hello, and welcome to the Momentum Ministry Partners podcast. This podcast is designed to provide that momentum in our God-given roles of leadership as we partner together to equip today's Christian leaders for tomorrow's opportunities. Thank you so much, and we hope you enjoy this episode.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Momentum Ministry Partners podcast. I'm Eric Miller and I'll be your host. In today's episode, we're talking about caring for your community, and we have a friend and lead pastor at Mosaic Church in Wadsworth, Adam Barton. Adam, welcome.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Dude, okay, so I'm just going to go right at it. Are you good with this?
I'm good with this. Let's do it.
I read on your website that you once hit a three-pointer over LeBron James.
Yes.
Is that true?
It is. It is. I have one witness who will gladly take the stand.
Is it your wife?
No, it is my dad.
Okay.
So the story is I got invited to this AAU workout thing. We went to high school at the same time. The reason I went is because I heard he might be there, and
nice.
We got paired up in a drill, and I hit a three over him. I won't tell you what happened on the next play, but
was he like tying his shoe?
Somebody might have got a phone call or something.
So
I don't know. But,
dude, that's awesome.
It's my claim to fame. Yeah.
All right, that's awesome. So being a LeBron guy, does that mean like LeBron's the GOAT, or you go like Michael Jordan?
Yeah, I am biased. I do. Listen, he brought the championship in 2016.
That's fair. And you're a Akron guy.
Right.
I understand.
Yeah.
All right.
So I'll take
okay.
LeBron.
I lean MJ.
I understand.
I grew up with the Bulls in the 90s.
6 championships are hard to argue with.
That's fair. All right, we're not here to talk about basketball, though we could. But let's talk about ministry, man. I want to share the story about like how I even we moved to the town that you're a pastor in, to give the context of the background of this, and then I'll let you kind of share how you got into ministry and some of your context. But when my wife and I moved to Ohio, we moved to the Akron area where LeBron is from, obviously. Right. And we learned from Jeff Bogue that he said that he did not want to plant a church in the Wadsworth area, which is the community that we both live in, right. Because of churches like you. He said there's so many good churches in Wadsworth, they don't need another one, which I actually loved, and I thought that was super cool.
I also love it.
There you go. Not having a Grace Church in your backyard. Right. So you're the lead pastor at Mosaic Church in Wadsworth. Kind of give us your background, your history. I know you're married, have 4 kids. Give us even that age range and some of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I've been married almost 20 years now. I got 4 kids, 13-year-old girl, 12-year-old boy, 6-year-old boy, and a almost 3-year-old girl. So a 3-year-old and a 13-year-old in the same house. That's
wild.
An adventure.
Yes, and 2 girls to boot. Yeah,
all the attitude.
I'll be praying for you for the next 10 years. That's awesome. All right, so give us kind of the backstory of like you being a lead pastor. The context for me is that like when we moved to Wadsworth, Mosaic was the first church that my wife and I saw. Having been a pastor for a long time, I was like, these guys are killing it in the community. You're at everything, like the signage. The like invitations are always well thought through. The like next steps beyond that event are always well thought through. But then like your people are there and they actually are smiling and like talking to people. And like, Adam, there's just this like genuine authenticity that I have seen now for multiple years that is a definition of Mosaic Church. And as I've gotten to know you, I think is a reflection of you as well.
Well, thank you.
So like we first met at the Blue Tip Parade,
right?
Which is if you don't know what that is, it is a small town.
You're not from Wadsworth if you don't know what that is.
It is a wild parade. But you guys, like your float, like there's like all the other floats are like, hey, we're pulling our tractor trailer and we have like our people on there, and they put like streamers or balloons that the air came out. You guys are like on another level.
Yes.
Tell the listeners a little bit about how that came to be.
Wow. Yeah. So that story goes back. Yeah. I mean, hearing you describe Mosaic is awesome because it didn't, I came lead pastor about 12 years ago. It was nothing like that. This is a hardcore revitalization. The church was all above 60 years old. And our biggest thing, so probably about 11 years ago, we did our biggest outreach was VBS. And I don't have a problem with VBS. VBS is fine, it's whatever. But we called it an outreach, so I still remember vividly that year. We had like 100 kids. We were super excited that we broke 3 figures. Man, we were so pumped. And I remember sitting down with the registrations and looking through them. And we had a little line on there that asked like what church, if they had a home church or not, and like what it was. And I kid you not, 96 of those papers, those kids had a home church somewhere.
Wow.
So I was like, okay. Again, I don't have anything against VBS, but if we're calling it an outreach, that means we reached 4.
Right.
And the amount of time and resources and energy that we put into this, putting on this awesome VBS, and then we reached 4 kids. So it started a conversation where we started to really think through, does this actually do the thing that we want to do, and how can we maybe get involved in the community? And the Blue Tip was actually our first step into the community. Wadsworth does this giant parade, and then they do a festival down at one of the parks. So I ended up like getting on the board of the committee that runs it, and we just kind of snuck our way in. Like you kind of have to start just saying, we'll do whatever you guys want.
Yeah.
And usually committees like that, they'll say yes to anything. So we said, hey, you guys do this little kind of pathetic kids land. We'd like to help with that. And every year we just kind of took it over. And then now it's Mosaic's kids land. Because if we left, you wouldn't do it anymore. So it became ours. And our heart behind it was just, we want to give back to the community. We want to build a relationship with the city of Wadsworth. It was kind of our mentality. And to give you the context of how this has worked out, we had 100 kids at that first VBS with like 4. This past year at Kidsland, we had 1,200 kids go through Kidsland. And most of them don't have church homes. And we got to interact with them, invite them to church and all that stuff. So for us, this is a huge shift into, instead of inviting the community to come to us, we went to them. And that was a huge shift for us.
That's awesome. That's really cool. I think one of the things that I am learning about you guys that's just amazing is like you're actually putting your money where your mouth is in a way to say, like, you really want to be outreach focused. In fact, having visited and come to your church a couple of times now, like the vision and your values is all over the place. Like on your website, it says a church for people who don't think church is for them. That's literally all over your walls. You walk into the lobby and you see it written. It's on the back of the t-shirts that you give to every guest that like Adam, like how do you really like, how did that process come about where you're actually like implementing that? A lot of churches say they want to do that, but can be a distance.
So I became lead pastor when I was 27, and I'll tell you, I was an idiot. I was, for sure. No offense for 20, but
if we're honest, most 20
most time in your 20s, you're kind of an idiot. So when I became lead pastor at 27, I thought, all right, here we go. It's going to be awesome. Everything's going to be great. I took over a church of mostly 50s and 60-year-olds, and I didn't think there was going to be a problem. I was wrong.
Yeah.
About a year in, the church had shrunk. It started at about 100 people. I had, through my brilliant leadership, led it to about 40.
I grew the church.
Totally grew it down to 40. And I did a state of the church sermon. And I told him, I said, in my opinion, I think most churches naturally kind of warp in on themselves over time. I think that is a natural thing. And I told him we were going to have to fight against that. And I said, hey, I want us to be about, I want the church to be about people who aren't here yet. I want our focus to be that, because I think we're naturally going to warp in, but let's fight against it and try to do that. Yeah. And I told my church of 40 people that if you didn't want to do that, you should find another church that would focus on the N word. So it was a super big risk. And now that I've read revitalization books and stuff, that's what not to do.
Right.
But God was gracious and did not murder the church through me in that. Yeah. And it did start. I did have to plant a flag in the ground. I did have to fight some battles. That's why I love hearing you say hey, you can kind of see it's in the DNA now. It didn't start that way. Sure. It was a fight. And now, 12 years later, I can look back and be like, all right, thank God he was gracious. It was scary. Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Super cool. So kind of give the story, because I've heard you explain this before. Awesome God story. How did you guys get to be literally right downtown Wadsworth?
Yeah.
Like your church building is on the main square, right on the corner. Tell the listeners that story.
Yeah. So when I first became lead pastor at this little church over by the hospital, Jeff will say it's 2 double wides pushed together. That's how big it is.
Nice.
We actually outgrew that. We became a mobile church. We met in Wadsworth High School for 5 years, which was 2 years longer than I wanted to. And it got to the point where we grew just big enough that it was actually very difficult to find a place to meet.
Yep.
And we did a 21 days of praying and fasting beginning of the year. And God kept laying it on my heart to pray for a home. That was the thing. Pray for a home, pray for a home. And I didn't want to, because as a leader, I always like to have an idea of what I'm going to do. I don't want to just throw something out there. I thought at least have some options, and I had nothing. So God kind of nudged me anyway. So I put it on the list. We started praying for a home. And that's the one everybody latches on to,
Yep.
Oh, no spiritual growth or anything like that. They only want to pray about that one. So I still remember one of the days during the fast, my eyes were bleeding. I was searching Google Maps for anywhere I can anything, a barn, empty house, anything, and I could not find anything. So we got to the end of 21 days, and I'm expecting an angel like Daniel. Please give me an angel to tell me what to do. Nothing happened. We had a worship night that Wednesday to kind of celebrate the end of the fast, and I was supposed to speak, and I was supposed to be the brave leader. And and everybody's like, "What did God do?" And I'm like, "Nothing yet."
Yeah,
but you have to pretend to be like. And
it's okay.
We still have a recording of it where I say this line towards the end, where I'm working myself up to believe, if God wants to give us a piece of dirt, He'll do it. If God wants to move somebody else out and move us in, He will. And saying that with all the faith I could muster, which wasn't all that much, to be honest. And I woke up the next morning, and I got a phone call from a guy who I just met being involved in the community in a lot of different ways. And he tells me, he goes, "Hey, I own a building. There's a church that's meeting in there. I wanted to give you guys first option. Would you like to move in?" And man, what a moment. That's something, I will never forget that, because it was well, one, as a leader, I swear you're only ever 80% sure of what you're supposed to do, right? We always say, God's... But man, in this case, I'm I know that God wants us here. He put us here. Yeah. I remember being on the phone with the guy. I was like, "Hey, I don't know you that well, so I have to hang up and cry now." So I'm going to fall into a puddle in my kitchen floor because of what God just did. And I would still say to this day, I can't decide what I was more moved by, the fact that God so obviously just said yes. It wasn't necessarily the building. It was just this very cool, this is precious to me that God said yes to that in such an obvious way. So we're there. We're in the middle of town, like you said, and being mobile for 5 years, we had put so much work into becoming that guerrilla warfare church of we don't have a front door. We don't have sign out by the road. So we did get involved in every community event. We could put anything the city did, we said, we're going to be there, and we're going to be giving stuff away, and we're going to be inviting people to church. And the philosophy was, whatever community event it is, we're going to try and make it better by our presence. That was always what we said. So every, they do a First Friday every month. We were there. Every Blue Tip, anything, we were we'll go and we'll put something on for the families. And now God gave us a building that's just you could throw a rock at it from where we used to stand out in the cold inviting people to church. So it's a crazy story. And
now I love that you literally open the doors to your church for those First Friday events, and you're welcoming people to come in. You have a different theme, kids zone, whatever it is, giving hot chocolate in the middle of the winter, that kind of stuff. It's been so cool
for us. So, and when you said, put your money where your mouth is, I've always joked with our church, I think outreach for a long time was our third biggest line item, because I always was no, we're going to push. We want to reach people. I argued with our elders. I'm I think we should put the mortgage in outreach because of how strategically located it is.
For sure.
Like you said, when the city has an event, all we have to do is open the doors. We don't have to pay any money for people to come into our building.
Yeah.
All we have to do is open up our doors.
Yeah.
So it is very strategic. I wish I was that good of a leader, but it was just a God thing, man. That's a God thing.
I still get chills thinking about that story.
Me too.
From the first time you told me, man. That's awesome. So Adam, I know the other thing, as you guys think about your values and how you try and impact the community, that also means you and some of how you spend your time as the lead pastor at this church. Like, you need to be connected and getting to know people in the community. I think if we're honest, oftentimes as pastors, we say we want to do that. Yeah. And then when you like pause and back up and look around, you're like, wait a second, all I know are believers.
Yep.
And I'm not being intentional with people in the community. How are some ways that you do that?
And I'm an introvert, so I naturally will just go into my study and do my thing. And I really had to push myself because I do have a heart to see people come to know Jesus. It's always been there. I've always kind of had that feel. So when I became a pastor, I was like, all right, this needs to continue. I knew that if I just let myself just kind of flip into neutral, that I would just be around church people all the time. I would just be around Christians all the time. So I've pushed myself. I'm on a couple of boards out in the community. And for me, this is what's so important. I mean, you talk about, I do see the leader as being a really important, like, you set the DNA a lot of times. So if I just go into my own Christian bubble, I think so will everybody else. So I push myself. Yeah. And it's really helped me as a pastor, especially my communication, to remember, hey, this is what an unbeliever thinks. This is how, and like to have that. It was a book I read, Made to Stick, where they mentioned the curse of knowledge. And the curse of knowledge is this idea that you don't remember what it's like to not know something. And the moment you know it, you think everybody else just kind of thinks like you. Yeah. And I think Christians have that curse really bad sometimes. And as pastors, I know it's so easy to go into this mode where everybody just knows already, and intentionally being friends with people who don't share that really helps remind me, oh yeah, these people don't at all think this way. So when I go to introduce a concept from the pulpit, I'm always able to now go, oh yeah, they could be sitting, like they could legitimately be sitting in my seats in my auditorium. Right. So I'm like really always aware as I go to prepare. And that's what's so important for me. It's not just, outreach isn't just, hey, we put on 13 events a year.
Yeah.
You could.
Right.
But if they walk in the doors and it still doesn't connect, for me, it all has to connect. It all has to say the same thing.
Yes.
So for when somebody interacts with us at Kidsland, and then they go on our website and then they show up for the first time, it all has to say the same thing. And then when I open up my mouth, it all has to be consistent. They have to be able to say, oh, okay, this is the same thing, not just, oh, they did an outreach event and then they talked to all Christians on Sunday morning and it didn't make any sense to me, so I'm never coming back.
Yeah, I went and visited once and everybody was wearing suits and ties, and I wasn't prepared for that because I came in sweatpants.
Yes, and they said, welcome, brother, and I didn't know what to do with myself.
Yes, yeah. Dude, that's really good. Adam, talk a little bit about go one step deeper in that. We're kind of scratching this piece, but I want to go a little bit deeper. I know your vision and values as a church, they drive the decisions that you make in your community involvement. But how does that play out in your services, in your weekend experience? Like, share with our listeners. I think a lot of our listeners are pastors, ministry leaders. They're trying to figure out, how do we make that match?
Yeah.
What have you guys learned in that process?
Well, from a philosophy standpoint, I believe, maybe this is controversial, I don't know, that a lot of people need to decide if they're going to belong before they decide if they're going to believe. And maybe that, I don't know. I don't know where you're at with that, but for me, that's a big deal. And I guess I've seen it play out. From just a pragmatic standpoint, I look at people and I think they have to decide, could I be one of those before they ever actually decide, do I believe that? So for us, creating environments where people interact with us, like I guess I want to surprise people, especially these days where people have perceptions of Christians.
Yep.
One of my favorite stories actually is the Blue Tip. We had a lady who showed up to a Blue Tip just with her kid, and somebody told her like, oh, we're a church for people who don't think church is for them. And she's like, really? And she's like, what, she kind of had an attitude about it. Like, what does that mean? And like, well, one of our volunteers was trying to, well, it doesn't matter what you wear. And like, nobody's going to judge you, and, using all those kind of churchy language. So she's like, we'll see. She shows up with I believe it was a Motley Crue t-shirt and leopard print like leggings. She's like, we'll see. We'll see. And she was on the coffee team this week. She would tell you, she goes, nobody even, it wasn't that nobody like judged me. She's like, nobody even looked at me. Like nobody even noticed that I was different than anything else. And I was like, for me, that was a huge part for her to be able to walk in and not feel. not only was it like, ooh, some old lady had to like hold back from wanting to say something.
Right.
They didn't even notice her.
Yeah. Here's a free church shirt so that you could put that on
Right.
over
Yes,
your
please.
inappropriate.
And don't sit in my seat. Right. But instead she had this environment where she walked in and she did really feel like, you know what? I could see myself here. And then she was able to actually hear the message. And for me, that was like eliminating these barriers. Paul talked about that, right? We tear down every obstacle that stands in the way. And for us, our outreach, I view it as tearing down these obstacles. Like when somebody interacts with our church and they're pleasantly surprised, or they see our obnoxious float rolling down the street and they go, what the heck is that? What are you? And we're like, we're a church. And like, really?
My kids still have those lightsaber pool noodles that they made.
Star Wars
Thank
year,
you,
man.
by the way.
It was a big one. Yes, I'm sure. It's fun.
I love that because those, you're giving them like hands-on opportunities to like integrate with the church culture and see like you're genuine and authentic, and we really do love God, and we really do care about people. Yeah. Like that's actually who we are.
And that's why like I do want to say I want to be in the community as much as possible. Like, so if on an individual level, I would say, and I think most Christians would agree, that you have to have a relationship with someone before you're able to effectively share the gospel with them, right? Like, you're not, I know there's a such thing as street preachers and all that, but generally speaking, I want to know you before I'm like, hey, have you heard of Jesus?
It's ideal.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. So I think about that not just on an individual level, but on a collective level, as in our church has a relationship with the city. And it took legitimately like 5 to 7 years before I could actually say that, where people actually look at our church now, even if they don't go to it and they go, oh yeah, Mosaic. Yeah, they're always at all the events. They give away everything. Yeah. Like I want people to have a certain thing pop into their mind when they think about our church, because I think that's necessary before they would ever show up and hear the message.
Right. Yeah.
And like, I just feel like that on-ramp into, yes, I want to be a good communicator and I'm cocky and I think I am a good communicator, but they're never going to actually hear it.
Right.
If we don't build a relationship with them first. Yes. So we kind of had this contract in our minds, like with the community, we're always going to be there. We're always going to show up. We're always going to give everything away. I'll fight people. Everybody, I get stuff all the time. Like, hey, can we sell something at your thing? No, we're going to give everything away. Because people perceive churches to be greedy and always taking. We're always going to give.
That's awesome.
Trying to surprise people. Like I said, I just want to build that relationship. And I believe it takes a lot of interactions before they're actually like, you know what? We should try, it's Easter. We should try that church. Yeah. I know we're going to have that now.
Yeah, for sure.
Just this morning, I was sitting with my my kids ministry director, and she was going through some of our first time guest cards. She was freaking out first because we had 5 this week for us. For our church, we're like, 5 is it was spring break, so we assumed we were going to be a little
down.
5 was a good number.
That's awesome.
And she's going through them. She's like, oh, this person, they put that they had heard about us in 2001 from the Easter thing we did. And they just now showed up. Wow. Like, that's a crazy thing to think. Wow. Like a full 2 years later, just now they're showing up. Yeah. But that's because they're not showing up because of the event. They're showing up because something happened in their life. Yep. But this was the church that they thought of. What was that church that did that Easter thing? Yep. And for me,
so good.
We wanted to create that. And I know some of that's reputation and some of it's, I think a more conservative pastor might be like, you're just advertising. Yeah, some of it is.
And honestly, some of it, like if we're honest, I mean, we know that there are these people too where they've just been watching you for that long.
Absolutely.
And they're like, oh, wow, they were out there when it rained on first Saturday and they were still giving stuff away. Maybe they really do care. Maybe we should go like your perspective in this, like, and you and I have talked about this before, like that phrase, like if your church ceased to exist, would the community even know? Man. Like, I think it's those kind of things that like, that's a big deal.
Yeah. That haunted me when I first became pastor. That's that phrase of, if your church disappeared, would anybody even notice? Because I had to be ruthlessly honest and just say, no, nobody would have noticed at all. Right. And I set out to change that. And we have, and now I have this, I pray this prayer before, actually every year at Blue Tip, when we have this picture we take every year now at Blue Tip, where everybody, all in the costumes and stuff, we take this big picture and everybody stands in a circle and I pray. And I pray this every year. It's an accidental tradition. I didn't set out to do this, but so fun. I pray this prayer like, hey God, take these silly things like candy and dressing up and a float and use them to do something spiritual. Have this be a first step for somebody to say, that's different. Like, I pray that he would use it spiritually, fully acknowledging that there's nothing spiritual about what we're doing right now.
Yeah,
but there is.
We're passing out copious amounts of candy.
Right. Right. And lightsabers that your kids are going to use to hit each other with. But
yeah, we won't go there anymore. Throw them away. I threatened to throw them away. All right. So for other pastors that are listening, that maybe they're like thinking, I'd love to like crack that code and figure out how to impact our community. Adam, like you yourself have joined different like boards in the community. Yeah. You've built that into a part of your rhythm, your week. What are other things that you would recommend? What encouragement would you give to pastors, maybe even in youth ministry, that they're just trying to like better build inroads into a community impact?
Yeah, I think our big idea coming in, most of the time, I think people's perception is the church wants something or the church is selling something. So I think one, you have to have a little bit of a long view on this. This is a marathon, not a sprint. So if like, hey, I'm only going to be at my church for 2 years, well, you're not going to do it then.
Right.
I actually think like part of the reason I've been successful is I decided Wadsworth is where God put me.
Yeah.
This is my little outpost in the kingdom of God. I'm supposed to fight the devil here.
Yeah.
So I view this as my spiritual battlefield.
Love it.
So I've done everything I possibly can to win then. I'm like, I'm going to know all the influential people. I'm going to have as many relationships as I can with as many people as I can at no cost. And then for us, from like an event standpoint, instead of putting on our own events because we didn't have a place to do it. We just decided to be a part of theirs. And it was very much with the hands open. Like, what do you guys need?
Yep.
Like, we'll do literally anything. We just want to be a part of it. And that, like the blue tip thing, it took us, I think, 3 years before we like had control over it, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? Like somebody else was still in charge of it.
Yeah. But even the fact that they're like, hey, we want to do this for our community. After the parade, we're going to do this event that we want families to stick around and children to come to. Like, that's a big ask to say, would you help us with that?
Yeah.
To the point where now your church is literally running it and does it well.
Yeah. But it's no joke.
Amazing.
Like if we didn't invest a lot of money in it, it wouldn't, like there is a put your money where your mouth is thing. It can't just be some like sticker over what we really want to do. Like you actually have to say, we're going to spend money on this. We're going to spend resources on this. We might stop doing something else in order to do this.
Yeah.
Because we need the energy. Yeah.
Yep.
Like, so I've had, and this is for me, I get so excited. I actually just had a meeting with a guy who is, I don't want to say begging, but like really, really, really asking the church to be a part of this other community event that's happening. He's like, I need you guys to show up. I need you guys to show up. And I told him, I said, listen, we got Blue Tip, then we have the fireworks, and now you want me to show up in August? And I told him, I said, dude, I can't do that to my people because I tell them it's all hands on deck.
Yep.
But you have to say no to something. Now, in that case, I'm really tempted because I just, we do, now it's in our DNA. Anytime somebody's like, and how cool is that though? That now we have such a reputation that they're saying, hey, you're first on my list. Can you guys show up to this?
Yeah.
But it took doing what nobody else would want to do for a long time in order to like have that relationship. And I want to say reputation, which it was a part of it. But knowing the community leaders, that's been big, especially through the stupid 2020 stuff. Like I was talking to all these people through this stuff, and we had it complicated because we were at the high school, so we couldn't just open when we wanted to.
True.
If I didn't have the relationships I had, we would have been, completely without anything. So getting into the community, and I know this, maybe this is scary for somebody to say, hey, like, I want to know, I'll say influential people. I don't want to say like, I don't want to be a sycophant and only know the important people, but like, hey, actually it's really important to know those people. Like, I want to know who the superintendent is. I want to know the mayor. I want to know these people, because when something happens, they're they'll call me now. Like
Right.
I'm able to like
Right.
actually interact with these people, and it's
And
really
you're
important.
like, as I'm hearing you, and we've spent time together, I've picked your brain on this stuff before. Like, you're asking questions of them
Yeah.
to learn how you can serve.
Yep.
To learn how can I pray for you. Like, leadership is hard. Like,
Yeah.
hey, I know you're the mayor, you're the whatever, you're the councilman. Like, there's things that are difficult about your job, and some of that, as a lead pastor, it's parallel tracks in a way. And so
we're dealing with the same stuff.
yeah, there's things you can connect
And
on
for me,
and
that's
influence.
I think that's another one, like, easy if you're saying, hey, I want to start
Yep.
somewhere. I just a couple weeks ago, like, had God like lay somebody's name on my heart who definitely doesn't go to the church, like somebody who does stuff in the city. And I found him on Facebook. I sent him a little message. Hey man, thought about you this week. I just want you to know I'm praying for you. I know it's rough right now because there's some stuff going on. And like, he got back, it was almost immediate, because I bet he doesn't get stuff like that very
Right.
often. And
yeah, the list of things you're doing wrong.
right. Yeah. Let me tell you, like, can I complain about something? No, I was just like, hey man, I'm praying for you. And it doesn't matter if he's a Christian or not. Like, that was like, I get it from leader to leader. Like, I see you, man.
Yes.
And I think that it just means a lot. Like you said, if you're asking questions, if you have this mentality that I want to be a resource to you, I'm not like cocky enough to say that I know I am, but whatever I can do. And that attitude is like a palms out. And I really do think people have been drawn to it. And it's built that relationship.
Yeah. And even like listening to this conversation, I think, and then seeing some of what I know you guys do, you're not trying to do everything. You're trying to do like one or two things and do them really well.
Yeah.
And do them to the best of your ability.
And I will
with
tell you,
excellence.
that's terrifying.
Yeah.
Because isn't it like, I don't know, if you're a pastor, you look at your church, and all pastors know the weaknesses of their church, right? You look at your church and you're like, oh, we suck at this.
Yeah.
You don't say that, but you know it, right?
Yes, for sure.
Like, I have to look at mine and go, we are going to be really good at outreach. We are going to be, if there's a such thing as 10 out of 10, we're going to nail that.
Yeah.
But that means we're not going to be always great at some other things.
Right.
And honestly, there's a little bit of, I'll be honest, there's guilt with that.
Sure.
Like, hey, you're not very good at this. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I can't be, I'm not Jeff Bogue, so I can't be good at everything like he is.
Jeff's not. He would say he's not good at everything. Yeah.
But I know myself enough to know that, like, hey, I'm going to really, really lean into our strengths here.
Yeah.
And if we're not great at something, I don't want to like be terrible, but I'm okay saying we're a 5 out of 10 here, but we're going to be a 10 out of 10 over here.
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit of an opportunistic leader. The building thing, all the outreaches, they were opportunities. Yeah. And I jumped on them. Yeah. And when God put it in my path, I was like, let's go.
So cool. So cool.
And I'm not, I'm not a genius. So just when God puts it in front of my face, I'm like, all right, let's go.
Let's do it. Let's do it. We'll be all in.
Right.
Adam, that's awesome. I love that. I really hope and pray to our audience that this conversation is of benefit to you. I know, Adam, you would be willing if anybody wanted to reach out and just pick your brain. You've joined the Momentum Pro cohort stuff, and that's even an opportunity for others to network and share ideas together and have, keep each other to be healthy. Yeah. Because so many churches and so many pastors right now are not healthy, and we need to be sharing these ideas. That's a huge part of why this podcast exists. Even so, Adam, thank you for your time and being willing to share what God's doing in and through your church. It's exciting. Thank you for what you guys do, because I love being in Wadsworth and getting to have our kids kind of be a part of that community.
Yep. And you're welcome for the lightsabers that
there you go. Stop hitting the dog with the pool noodles. I know they're lightsabers. Yes. Awesome. All right. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode. If you have other questions, things that we could be a resource to you, if there's a way that Momentum can serve you as a church pastor or leader in any way, please reach out to us. Our email is info@buildmomentum.org. We'd love nothing more than to be a resource to you. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Well, guys, I think that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. We'd be really honored if you went ahead and subscribe to the podcast, and that way you can just kind of stay up to date with the episodes that we're posting in the future. To learn more about Momentum Ministry Partners and our many other resources, please be sure to follow us on social media at Momentum Ministry Partners, or check out our website, www.buildmomentum.org.